This is the true burden of all podcasters to watch their podcast grow beyond them.
The fuck?
So, welcome to Gentlemen Prefer Cinephiles. It's a movie podcast. You might have heard of it since you're here. We're going to be talking about Star Wars today. Really timely, right on time. Welcome, everyone. We're going to begin, as always, with current events now.
This is like the first episode it's happening, technically, and you're like, as always.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, no, exactly.
Every time.
Yeah.
Vince, would you like to start off with your news article?
Really quick.
Oh.
Who are you?
Hi, everyone. Good question.
Introduce yourself.
We have a special guest for this episode.
Yes, my name is Vincent Burke.
He has an FW in the middle.
Yeah, that's my honorary title. The W stands for Wumbo.
The W stands for victory.
The W stands for danger.
You can't fool me once. You can't fool me twice. You can't fool me again.
Fuck it for once, you can't forget.
But yes, I'm the
So you're actually a writer on the Star Wars show, are you not?
Yeah, actually, uncredited. Yeah,
No, he just got an offer.
The Star Wars Rebels. Oh yeah, he knows a guy that got an offer to work for.
Yeah, exactly. No, I work actually for I work for a lot of people, but yeah, the Star Wars franchise is just one of them. So, I'm what you call an expert within the nearest 20 feet, and by expert I mean not. So,
Just to give everybody like a prepper, it's like almost midnight and we're all very tired. So
I feel great.
Charlie's gonna be keeping the ship sailing today.
That's pretty much how it seems to be going.
Yeah.
But Vince, tell us a little bit about your background with your knowledge where you're coming out with this Star Wars stuff.
I am a student of anthropology, and so I do look at some of the symbolism that lies within. Are you laughing at
Who would want to be an anthropology major?
No, you said I'm a student of anthropology, and I was almost like, "What's he like?"
Woo!
And then the whole crowd like just was quiet. Crickets.
I'm just gonna use this tube to make a noise every time there's like a moment for that.
I don't know if you guys listen to podcasts. This is what they're like, anyway.
Is it?
You're a student of anthropology.
I don't listen to podcasts. It's true. No, I am a student of anthropology, and I look at, I guess...
So Professor Anthropology.
Yeah. Where's the boom-booms? Alright, so...
Wait. Woo! So Vince, you think about this from a very historical, symbolic, mythic kind of quality.
Yes. Also, as a student of anthropology, I look to extrapolate everything beyond their base meaning, even if it's not actually there, because that's my job. So
but doesn't that mean that it actually is there?
Explain it to me like I'm a kindergartner.
Okay, well, I won't talk to kindergartners, okay, but,
Yeah.
I'll explain it to you like a first grader who are more inclined to
Explain it to me like I'm in preschool.
Okay, look, the curtain is purple, but maybe it's not. And that's what we're gonna look at.
What does that mean?
I thought you were an anthropologist, not a fucking existentialist.
More like an
His name is
anthropologist.
actually David Hume.
Yeah.
He wants you to imagine everything without its property.
Imagine a Star Wars without its property.
Imagine a Star Wars without that music.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
It's not a Star Wars.
Well, Vince, why don't you start us off with your news article, please?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know the author and I don't know where it came from. But
Great.
It's an article on the Solo film and the amount of money that they have pulled in and whether the audience is actually getting what is now referring to as Star Wars fatigue. And it looks at the month of releases, the amount of months that are released between a Star Wars film and the amount of money that's actually pulled into it, and whether the audience is still interested or becoming, like I said, fatigued with it. So.
Quick question. How do you measure that? Because I know personally, I know Star Wars fans that have gotten burnt out and have told me that, but how do you extrapolate that into numbers?
I think it's just based off of ticket sales and then times, and then they just...
I guess that makes sense.
They also look at like critic aggregator sites, I think, to get the general feeling of how people are responding to it.
Actual
Internet comment
I
sections.
thought we were boycotting those after Suicide Squad.
Yeah, right? Disney's paying off the Rotten Tomatoes to give Rotten Tomatoes the good.
You know, it makes sense.
If you really think about it,
theory, it's the same thing.
Why wouldn't they just waste so much money paying people off to like this stuff? Yeah, oh my god.
We need the Illuminati thing to come in. It's fun. Yeah, but so it's also it actually brings up a good question. Is it's writing off of the heels of the release of Infinity War, and so is it Star Wars fatigue or is it?
Movie fatigue.
I think it's cinematic, like needing to have a cinematic understanding of a film. Like I mean, not a cinematic understanding. I think it's.
Dr. Spock.
I think it's needing to have because all these films that are coming out really in really rapid fire, they all are burnt out on the like scales already, on like the stakes. They're already really burnt out on that, so that's probably really exhausting for an audience. I can imagine, especially if you only go to the theater to see films like this. And also, I mean, it's just, they come out so frequently now. Like, so there's no stakes. There's no stakes. They're all kind of like half done, and then also on top of that you need to have seen 3 or 4 other films before them to understand the so there's a lot of baggage that comes with proverbial baggage that comes with going to see, like, you can't just go to the theater, be like, I want to see Infinity War and have a good time.
I feel like the average audience just doesn't really care. Like, they're just going to the movies to like kill a couple hours, so they're like, oh, I like the character Han Solo, and they just I feel like the bar is not that high.
I understand that argument, but I don't think that's giving a lot of like I don't know. I think an audience is a little bit more. I think that's an audience that just watches it on Netflix after it's been released. I don't think that's an audience that's actively going to the theater.
I've had too many people at the theater come over to me and be like, that movie was great, screw what everybody else says. And I was like, okay, I don't know why you're telling me this. Like, you seem a little...
That's because they were talking about that Christ movie.
What?
What was it called?
The Paul Apostle of Christ.
Paul Apostle Christ.
I don't know what that means. I don't know what the big deal is.
Dragging Christian films. We'll edit that out.
What, Erynn, do you want to go next, or do you want me to go next?
Screw what they said. They were talking about Paul Apostle Christ. Mine is that Best Friends is coming out on Tuesday, and my body's ready. It's coming out Monday, actually. It's Monday and Wednesday. It's a Fathom event. If you didn't see part 1, I don't want to talk to you.
I know someone who would lose their head during the French Revolution. That's all I'm saying.
You betray me.
You're totally right. I'm not a super big protest person.
No.
I'd be caught.
I don't know. Protests are pretty cool, though.
They're pretty.
I like
lame.
going to them. What do you mean? Why? What?
Lame.
They're pretty.
It's necessary to the process.
Oh,
we're not gonna talk about this right now. We're not gonna talk about this right now.
Best Friends is coming out.
Tommy
Wiseau and Greg Sestero, they accidentally almost made a good film.
Oh.
But they didn't, actually.
I'm ready. Because, like, there were Easter eggs. Okay, spoiler alert for whoever didn't watch the first one.
That's my spoiler.
Do you care about spoilers for this?
No.
Okay, so it's hinted at very strongly in the cinematic language, in the visuals, that Tommy Wiseau is like he's effing corpses or something crazy like that. Then like it ends with him getting pushed off a cliff, and it's wild. And then he's standing there with like a mask he's like standing there with a face mask, but it's Tommy Wiseau, and it's really weird.
And also for 2 hours nothing happens.
A lot happens.
Not a lot.
They start selling gold teeth. They get into a fight. They eat Chinese food. Anyway, that's my current event.
My article is one that I really want to drag. It's this is going to be a puff piece.
Is this like that Disney article that was like, Disney's just the little guy?
Forbes.
Excuse the fuck out of me.
Forbes. Scott Mendelson. Solo: A Star Wars Story is bad news for rebooted Indiana Jones. So essentially, it's about how Solo is underperforming somewhat, and he says Solo stumbled at least partially due to the audience's indifference or outright hostility to the character of Han Solo being played by Alden Ehrenreich, who was fine in the film and excellent in Beautiful Creatures and Hail Caesar. So this is obviously a very, like...
Can I tell you what I'm hearing right now?
Hang on.
Okay.
So then the rest of the article is him talking about the box office returns of the James Bond switchovers in between, and like the ups and downs of that. Moving on to let's see. Harrison Ford replaced Alec Baldwin as Jack Ryan in the early 1990s and scored since Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger were sold as kick-ass action movies starring Han Solo and Indiana Jones. Blah, blah, blah. And it just like goes into Batman being replaced by the other actors, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. It's such a long article, and it just goes over the same type of thing over and over again. And it's like, oh, well, people want to see a rebooted Indiana Jones if Solo doesn't do good. And I was like, this is...
I literally just heard like something as crazy as like, that Twin Peaks is doing pretty bad. That's not good for the Blue Velvet remake. I'm like, what? These things have nothing to do with each other.
Outside of it, like what people... So
outside of like one, I guess trends
like,
being drawn, lines being drawn, like imaginary lines.
Ford?
It should make the industry take pause and take stock in the notion of rebooted and recasting popular cinematic heroes with lesser or otherwise unknown movie stars. In the eyes of the audience, Bruce Willis is John McClane, Harrison Ford is both Han Solo and Indiana Jones, while Matt Damon is Jason Bourne. When it comes to big hits and iconic character-specific franchises, sometimes nobody did it better than the guy who did it first.
Well, I guess we'll just raise the fucking dead then and bring back all the original actors for all the original films.
Well,
or just don't reboot stuff.
My thing is, I don't necessarily have an issue with rebooting depending on where it's coming from. Because if it's to recontextualize something that doesn't make any more sense, that's fine. That makes sense.
How many times do movies do that?
But I'm not saying that it happens frequently. I'm just saying that that's what
that's
a
what
reboot.
I'm saying.
Anyway, what are you talking about? Then why are you arguing?
I'm not arguing with you. Why do you think this is an argument?
Like, what are you talking about?
Every time I speak, it's not an argument.
So then, like, I don't even understand. This article is so misguided in so many different ways.
It just feels like nothing. It feels like a fluff piece.
It feels like
too much time on their hands.
Yeah, literally. It's
Forbes has to fill something up with Solo.
He did a really good job playing Indiana Jones. We better not remake that. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Too fucking late.
It kind of doesn't come down on either side. It's just kind of like,
and I'm like,
this is
what
a
are
thing.
you talking? And it's so confusing. It's like, we should remake because people don't understand and they should cast new people, but the old people are better. And I was like, what are you doing?
It's like a conspiracy theorist with the string.
And that was hot off the presses.
Yeah, literally. I'm like, what?
Now on to...
Get me a picture of Spider-Man.
And now on to our main attraction. Now, Vince, why don't you walk us through what our topic is going to be today for the main course?
Well, the main course, after that little fun appetizer, is looking at some symbolism.
We're gonna edit this together so that joke's not gonna make any sense.
It's gonna make perfect.
You're gonna be like, so we're talking about this today after that little appetizer.
That's perfect. It'll be fine.
Look, that's what that'll just be referring to the news part. Like, let's not let's not focus too much on the structure and just go into it.
So it's looking at sort of the symbolism in it is looking at the symbolism in Star Wars: The Last Jedi and
Star Wars: The Last Jedi. You say?
Is that what you say? I hope everyone's
Is that the name of the episode?
Is The Last Jedi a symbol? Just kidding.
Yes.
Is it plural or singular?
All words, all written forms of expression or symbols, folks. Let's get that out of the way.
Everything's made up.
Everything is made up.
The points don't matter.
Fine, none of this matters. But what does matter is the fact that Star Wars is chock fucking full of symbolism, and so this is no one has enough time in the world in the galaxy to talk about all the symbolism that's within Star Wars. So today we'll just focus on a couple of key points, maybe not even key, but in our opinion some of the more important ones that are found in the film itself. So yeah, that's what
Howdy do. That sounds like a hoot and a half, sir. Let's talk about laser swords.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I like laser swords.
Before we start, though, I want to see what everybody generally thought of The Last Jedi.
All right,
I was pleasantly surprised.
Round table.
I thought it was good overall. I think I gave it 4 stars.
Out of
5 out of 6 out of 100.
8.5.
We had this running joke in my family where one time we saw a movie and Veronica, who has interesting taste.
His sister is Veronica.
Yeah, my oldest sister. We saw something and we were all talking about how it was pretty good. And Veronica was like, "Oh yeah, pretty good, pretty good." I'd give it 4 out of 10 stars. and my dad and I were like, "That's pretty good."
She's running on like IMDb
I don't know.
ratings.
We always say after movies now we're like pretty good 4 out of 10. But anyway, general feelings, I thought it was really uneven and it had a lot of flaws, but I think that overall it's good and I liked what it was trying to do more than what it was, and overall I think it's pretty good. That's what it was.
Yeah, I'd say like a 7 out of 10. It had its moments, and in other moments there's direct criticism. There's lots of good things about it, but there's also some glaring
The problems I had were
issues.
directing issues. They weren't anything like acting or technical wise.
I think as a movie as a whole there were some issues.
There's some pacing.
I think screenplay.
The child, I mean, they really make it really focus on the children audience, as if Guardians of the Galaxy, they're trying to pull a Guardians of the Galaxy here by pulling in the younger character elements to a lot of it.
That's really interesting that you compare it to Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's the same humor.
I don't see Guardians of the... I just see Guardians of the... I often use it as an example on the podcast of really adult stuff.
We were rewatching
I
it.
think it's
That's really interesting.
We were rewatching it a bit earlier today, and the beginning of the movie starts with that really dumb joke where he's like doing like a phone call prank against the general, and Vince commented that it was like Guardians of the Galaxy then, because it's sort of like that kind of like adolescent type humor where it's a little childish and it's a little bit like, I feel like starting the movie off with such a joking, like they have like a whole tone problem where like these jokes just come out of nowhere and kind of undercut the movie.
I don't think Guardians of the Galaxy has the same tone problem. So
No. It's the tone done right, but Star Wars isn't supposed to like. Not supposed to, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
like I feel like it
exactly.
didn't work. That's it.
We're all on the same page. Right?
Anyway.
Yeah.
There it
You
is.
didn't need to explain it to me.
It's
I didn't.
So, but I do think that's so apparent that it becomes it becomes overwhelming to a certain extent. I had the same feeling when I saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Again, we're very back to similar formula, I guess.
Yeah, to transition back, I guess. The main issue I had with The Last Jedi was I found a lot of its symbology and symbols to be super heavy-handed.
Yeah.
That as well. I think Charlie and I actually were talking about this a little bit earlier. Was the move from the spiritual element of the Force as being something extremely dramatic and totalist in its perspective in some cases, as far as its references towards Christianity.
Could you explain that all for a viewer who is...
The island that we find Luke on has the inhabitants-
what is totalist? Explain your terminology a little more.
Oh, sure. So, something that's very blanket doesn't require a lot of abstract thought or extrapolation in order to require the end.
Or I guess to
produce.
break it down. It's almost propaganda, where you're being told one version of the story and you're being told what to believe. Like, this character is bad. That's just bad. It's bad. Mm-hmm. This character is good. It's just good. Yeah, just kind of like that.
It's total in its perspective.
Yeah.
And, so yeah.
So yes, okay, continue your point. I just want to make sure that was cleared up.
No, it's totally understandable. But so, I mean, the inhabitants on the island, where they find Luke is at, we were talking about this earlier, are dressed in this sort of attire that reflects...
Basically nunnery,
The nunnery, and they're protecting the scrolls, the sacred texts that, are there from a being higher than their own. And
the Jedi books.
The Jedi books, the sacred texts there. And I think that's... It gets to a point where they're not even trying.
Well, I feel like I like the idea of the frog ladies that are just there, refurbishing all the time and taking care of it. But I feel like, costuming-wise, they could have done something that was more interesting than just, the white nun gowns. Like, I feel like it just, it feels a little bit too, too close to a reference to like the earthly religion that I feel like it kind of it loses some of the mysticism to it from like the earlier Star Wars. But I thought
to kind of like take that point of like kind of missed opportunities with symbolism and kind of equating it to the storyline with Rose and Finn, it's really interesting because I mean compared to the first Star Wars, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan or a huge Star Wars buff by any means, but I do think the social commentary in the originals are good in that doesn't what.
Bless you.
I just saw
that. No, I was trying to be like, I've got to sneeze, please.
Yeah.
But to take it to where Rose and Finn's storyline, I do think this initial Star Wars, the original films, are really good in that it kind of creates this social dichotomy and like this social commentary based in class in a really interesting way where you just reflect upon it. It's not like we poor. They rich.
Yeah.
Rich bad. Like, you know? So that was frustrating. But in addition to that, you have this combined in element where it's like there's a lot of children just thrown in for nothing.
Oh, weird.
But so that it's like a really weird pathos.
Thrown in for nothing?
No, it's just a really weird pathos thing.
You know,
and
the
I
Canto
don't
Bites
necessarily
sequel,
I can't really say whether or not it's right at this point we're just at Last Jedi. I can't say if it was like setting up for something in the future or not, because it was very heavy-handed, the like emotional element of the kids. It's like not only were Rose and her sisters slaves, they were slaves when they were little kids. And I'm like, I understand that you need to throw things like that in just so the audience feels bad and like is like, oh man, they were kid slaves. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like you can have social commentary without it being so heavy-handed.
Or
and you don't have to like hit certain check boxes to be socially conscious. You know,
it's still adding. I think it might even be adding to that identity of consumerism in the youth culture that they're tagging onto. Again, by that sort of creating of attaching the marketing to the younger generation, which have parents who can afford merchandise. And things of that nature, and you can get a younger individual attached to a film because they can relate to a character in it. Then you have that individual hooked for at least 5 years on marketing.
Less terminology, Vince.
Of course I do. No, that's fine.
There are porgs in it. There's certain imagery that is very speaking and attempting. I guess it's not
rabbit horses. Horses mixed with rabbits mixed with fennec foxes.
There's certain things that are being done that is clearly for a. I don't think it's necessarily humor-wise like we were discussing earlier, but I do think there's certain imagery and certain simplifications of the certain storylines for like younger audiences to be more connected to the material.
Yes, I need a translator. Yeah. And depending on how far you want to go with that, one would say that could even be used to the advantage of, for marketing purposes, by taking advantage of the younger individuals and having their parents, again, sort of pay
or like kind of taking advantage of the diehard Star Wars.
That's true. Like the older people that grew up with it and are now back, buying lots of merchandise. So Vince, you wanted to go like kind of like 3 different scenes you wanted to kind of look at for the symbolism specifically.
Well, there's a couple. We don't necessarily. I mean, I drew up 3 major ones, but they sort of all revolve around Luke. Actually, for a lot of this, as much as the Last Jedi is concerned about Rey, a lot of the symbolism actually lies within Luke himself. There's a lot of individuals and authors out there who would suggest that they're not even suggest. There's a known comparison between Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces and the Star Wars franchise and the hero cycle, which we'll have to attach some sort of resources onto the podcast.
Really quick, not resources. Hero of a Thousand Faces, to give it a basic synopsis, it's if you're watering it down to the original Star Wars subtext, it's kind of Han Solo specifically. He's a character that meets a lot of a certain archetype, and he has certain characteristics that feed into that archetype. It's kind of like when you look at something like Commedia dell'arte, where you have like a character like it's the old man. There are certain characteristics you associate with an old man that make him an old man. It's kind of like that with other types of...
The hero with 1,000 faces is basically just the outline of, like, the hero's journey that you see the cycle.
Yeah, so, like, the hero, he has to leave home. He has to have... There's an inciting event that makes him want to leave home. He has to run into an issue. There's, like, a wise person.
An elixir, all sorts of...
So, like, that kind of stereotypical storyline that a lot of... I mean, like, Star Wars follows it. Like, Lord of the Rings follows it.
My copy of Hero with 1,000 Faces has Luke Skywalker as one of the pictures on the cover, actually. So
exactly.
Well, it's because Star Wars is like a token. Star Wars follows it so exact.
Well, I think there was even discussion of Joseph Campbell being actually good friends with George Lucas, and so it's, you know.
Well, but I mean, like, also, like, Hero with 1,000 Faces, like, everything as far back as the Odyssey is exactly Hero with 1,000 Faces.
Yes. Well, it's, I mean, Joseph Campbell, when I get into this too much, Joseph Campbell claims to have said that he knows all the stories of the world, but he knows most of the Western tropic stories.
Oh my god, I remember reading his book on the myths.
Well, also, like, Joseph... If you read the Greeks, the foundation for Western literature, of course you've read the initial, what...
However, you see parallels
need to just feel special.
You see parallels to Moses.
Yes,
in this
and
film.
so that's where this all comes down to, is that the idea of the creation of a character that's in all of these, that's in most of these narrative structures and narratives that come through, including Star Wars, is what I think the Greek would call the chorus, or the teller of events, the individual who narrates life itself. And usually that comes in the form of an objective narrator, a third person, when it comes into these stories. But in this particular case, it seems that the Jedi themselves are the ones who are the narrators and the masters of the universe, being able to go to their sacred texts and tell the future and be able to go in at supposedly attempt to be third person views, as we see when they actually disappear into the Force. And Luke himself... You should just say,
like, what are the official books of the Jedis?
They're just called, like, the ancient scrolls, the ancient texts.
Yeah, they're just called sacred texts.
Perfect.
And,
the Necronomicon.
Yeah, right, the Necronomicon of the Jedi. And, there's a lot of comparisons to, Luke and another very famous, narrator, one who prophesizes, or a prophet, was Moses. Leading the Israelites out of Egypt. And the thing is, in a very similar fashion, you have Moses, who does lead the chosen people to free land, and but he is not the one who eventually leads his people. It is actually Joshua who at the end leads them. And in this case, we see a very similar structure with Moses leading. The individuals of Moses being Luke, those who can survive, leading those to freedom. However, it will not be Luke who carries these individuals to freedom themselves, but will be the last Jedi, which is Rey.
So this is true. This is part of the Moses story. In it, Moses supposes his toes are roses.
But Moses supposes erroneously.
But Moses, he knows his toes aren't roses.
But I gotta say, like, even when it's discussing, like, this whole idea of the Last Jedi, like, I think the whole feedback loop of the stakes and how I guess tired the whole formula of the hero's journey is, like, it almost removes the stakes, because, I mean, you go into the film and you're certain that Luke isn't the Last Jedi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did anybody here actually think, oh my god, what if he's the last one?
I think it's less of a problem with the monomyth itself, which I think has been used really well in different things over the years, even recently. I feel like the problem with the movie is that it ends almost exactly where it begins, with the same stakes, with the same setup, and so it feels like there's not really any progression being made in the story.
Wait, but really quick. I don't know. I have a lot more criticism on how the formula is just reused. I don't think it's a perfect formula, and I think people should...
Well, honestly, this conversation would be good for if we were to do a Star Wars as a whole. An episode on symbolism within Star Wars.
That sounds terrible.
What?
And what?
That sounds like something you'd want to do.
So, Vince, we'll just do a... We'll do a
separate one. But that will provide, I think, a little bit more insight as far as to the direct criticism that we're discussing a little bit more in this. But speaking of roses and toeses, is moving on a little bit to our next sort of symbolic topic was the salt mines or whatever it was
Describe the
called.
sequence.
When they are in the bunker at the end of the film attempting to escape, and there's Kylo Ren is attacking the base with all of his might, and there's salt on the ground, and we see Luke manage to somehow get inside the base, and then walk outside of the base and have a confrontation with Kylo Ren, mano a mano, in the salt. And one of the big things that is focused on is the feet. A lot of the time you see these sort of close-up shots of the feet when they're walking on the salt being white. You see Kylo Ren sort of stepping on and moving the salt as he steps on it, revealing the red. And I think a lot of this has to do with the internal development of the character, with Kylo Ren not really caring about the collateral damage that he's causing by walking on this planet and changing the atmosphere of it, as compared to Luke, who, when you do see walk on it, even though he is not there, it is still a reflection of his sort of understanding of the local environment. And it's does not disturb the ground as he walks on it, nor does he leave behind any sort of trail, again, because he's physically not there, but also because he has become one with his environment, and his understanding of how to sort of get from place to place without disrupting it or causing collateral damage sort of shows his oneness with the surroundings. And I think that that's an important comparison when we look at the development of Kylo Ren as a character. Because I do believe that scene in itself solidifies his internal being as something that can be cleverly changed, perhaps to a salt white, but within is nothing more than fire and molten.
Erynn, you had something to say about the symbolism of that sword earlier, right? Where you thought that some of the colors were obvious in that way?
I mean, I don't think it's that sequence initial. I think it's that sequence on its own. I think that's just the Last Jedi issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We can go into that.
Yeah, go on, yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's just... I mean, there's not really much to discuss in terms of it. Like, it's just like, red is bad.
Yeah.
Red and black is bad.
Right. Yeah.
White is good. Oh, look, the bad guys have white on. It's subverting the good white. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, thanks.
Right. Thanks for that. Couldn't have figured it out.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's just the issue with The Last Jedi is that the fact that it has symbols, it's just like the symbols are so on the nose that it just makes it a lackluster experience because you don't have to think about them.
Yeah, exactly. And I honestly, the only one that required, I believe, any sort of abstract thought was the two sunsets that you see towards the end when Luke does actually become one with the Force, because there aren't two sunsets ever until the very end, which is the sort of flashback and revealing of his last thoughts, or is the end of the journey or the beginning of it, because the cycle started when he contemplated his journey to begin on Tatooine at the beginning of the saga itself, and he saw the two sunsets. And I think that was although it
even that's a little on the nose.
Even that it's very on the nose,
that,
but even if you haven't seen the films, why would you? Either way,
I just don't. Yeah, I don't understand who would go into The Last Jedi without have seen.
But it's part of the whole totalistic experience.
And like, I really appreciate the Star Wars push for like more diversity and all these types of things. Like, I understand. I think that's.
Is it, or is it just?
I think it's doing that well, but I think if it's going to push for diversity and inclusivity, it needs to have a story that's like really well done.
Yeah.
Like, because the kind of diversity Star Wars has deserves a good story that's really well-rounded and told well visually and symbolically, but it's just really, it just feels half-assed, like, you know?
Well,
they're pushing, like, diversity of characters, which is good, but narratively there's no diversity in, like, the types of stories.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of infuriating, because I feel like they were attempting to evolve an enormous amount of portions of this universe all at once, and it's falling on its face. They're trying to evolve this sort of humorous experience. They're trying to evolve this shift from older character attachment to this younger character attachment, while also trying to break the mold as far as diversity is concerned in film. And they're not reaching the mark in any of them, and they're all falling flat on their faces, and it's extremely apparent throughout the entire film. That's one of them. Again, it's this transition, their attempt to transition from the attachment of audiences to the younger characters, and you lose out on all of the character development that was already previously created for the older characters. And we lose out on that. I'm sure, if we were to get a director's cut of this, how much other character buildup would we have that we're not seeing on screen that was taken out solely so they could include a little scene with birds flying all over a Wookiee.
And also, we've discussed this in porg stinks.
They
all have the same name.
Respect.
We've discussed this in depth, separately, and I think this really affects how the symbols function in it because Star Wars is such a character piece.
Right.
When you watch The Force Awakens and then go into The Last Jedi, it doesn't feel like you're picking up and moving on. It feels like they're completely separate characters.
Right, yeah.
When you're watching Rey at the end of The Last Jedi, or when you're watching Rey at the end of Force Awakens, and then it picks up to The Last Jedi, it feels like you've missed a lot. It feels like you've either missed a lot or her initial character development didn't work out, and it's just really off-putting that kind of consistency isn't held throughout, especially for something that prides itself on wanting to create a multi-film experience to tell a longer length story.
Truly, the only consistency we saw throughout the film as far as symbology was concerned was self-sacrifice, which happened from the very beginning of this movie.
And I think self-sacrifice is one of the most tired things you could throw into a film.
And they have done it. And let me tell you about how many times it happens in this movie. It's insane.
I'm like, wow,
almost
they're
every
good.
character
They
attempts
sacrifice
some sort of
themselves.
or attempts at it. Even when they attempt it, they don't fully go through with it. I don't know how many times at this point, Finn has attempted to sacrifice himself for the greater good. But
and it's I get it. He's a good person. He's trying to sacrifice himself left and right. What else?
Right, yeah, exactly. Is that what his character's for? Is that what the development of this character is for? Is the sacrificial character who attempts to do it every time but is saved by someone else from doing it? And thus...
Yeah, I think what Star Wars is doing really well is diversity, and I think that I really like Kylo Ren. I think Kylo Ren's very well-rounded as a character.
Great character.
Yes. I would say...
I find him a lot more interesting than Darth Vader, personally.
I do, I agree. Well, Darth Vader he had cemented experiences that were given to us while we're seeing Kylo evolve.
Yeah.
Well, they serve very different functions as characters.
Serving different functions aside, I just think Kylo Ren's more interesting.
I don't know.
I understand the different functions.
No. I
believe that's
I was just saying that I feel like...
No, I was just making sure it was clear that, I understand that.
Yeah, you understand.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
I'm just saying, Darth Vader... I feel like has more of a presence that I feel like, it's like a different type of villain, but I would still say I prefer his presence in the story more than Kylo Ren, I guess.
And the thing is that Kylo Ren reminds me an enormous amount of Anakin.
I think the arc.
Yeah.
I think the arc
that he.
Portion of it.
I think the arc Kylo Ren goes through is a really interesting just take on a villain. Because a lot of people really complain about that kind of weaknesses, or his overt, I suppose, emotional weaknesses. Mm-hmm. But I think that's something that's really interesting that we didn't quite get with Darth Vader until the very end. Because Darth Vader, he didn't really get interesting until the last moments.
Right.
He was in and that doesn't do that much for me.
Well, that entire Darth Vader's character. Israelites back in the leading of the people.
Because it's so clear.
Well, I think because it makes such a clear distinction as to what's going to be moving forward. If you tie it together with the Hero of a Thousand Faces, we can accurately probably predict what's coming up. But I do think it's a clever sort of way of maneuvering their way out of a very, 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 very deep ditch they've dug themselves now at this point. After all of these films of repetition that will allow for some sort of opening to occur. And so, I don't know, I really sort of enjoyed that bit. So, yeah. What about you guys?
My least favorite was the introduction of that redheaded villain. Because it was the most on-the-nose villain entry I've ever seen in my life, and I laughed out loud.
Admiral Hux?
Yes! Yeah. The music, gets dun 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 dun. He's, the jet is all black. He's in a black leather Nazi trench, and he has bright red hair, and I was
symbolism.
This is too much for me. That's my least favorite one. My favorite one was the suicide bomber at the beginning.
Yeah, the style again, but yeah.
Because everyone was into it because it's the good guys. And I was like, okay.
Okay.
Alright.
Yeah, exactly.
I just thought it was a little interesting. I'm not saying one thing or the other in terms of, the suicide bomber at the beginning. I'm not saying if I agree or disagree with her. I just said it was interesting.
Definitely.
Especially in the audience that I was in.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely, again, that element of self-sacrifice right out of the gate.
I don't think the self-sacrifice is interesting. I think, like, politically it's really interesting to see how people react to something different.
Still trying to think.
Oh, okay.
My least favorite symbol is, of course, the Porg. My favorite symbol is, of course, Kylo Ren's chest.
Charlie and I, whichever one of us gets Adam Driver first, we're gonna leave the other.
No. Aaron's way better than Adam Driver.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
Charlie, did you hear Charlie's no?
No.
No.
It was more like a no. Yeah. So, but for real, I really like the montage that they do when Luke's telling her about the Force, and they have like the life and the death and everything. I thought that was good stuff.
It'd have been good if it was paced better.
I agree.
whole-
No, I agree. No, I agree. No, I agree. The editing, the whole pacing of the movie is
It's like they're like doing a really slow walk up a hill and discussing.
It's 2.5 hours long, and how much actually happens?
They're
in the
doing
movie?
like a whole
All of which
slow.
45 minutes could have been cut
They're
out
doing
on
a
that casino
slow.
planet.
They're doing a slow. They're doing a slow
They're
walk
doing a
up
slow-
the hill, and then just cut to him like fucking getting tit juice out of the.
Right,
I'm like,
right.
is this a comedy? Is this
Yeah.
a drama?
Well,
An
again,
undiscovered Shakespearean classic.
That humor wasn't even, has never been apparent. It's never been that way in the saga, and it is that I think I'm gonna from this point forward call it the Guardians of the Galaxy reaction, because I think that there was that really did.
That's implying that Guardians of the Galaxy is bad.
I'm not saying that at all. That's not implied whatsoever. Well,
It's
I'm
just
saying
it's
is
just
that
the
it's
point
a
that
formula.
it's unoriginal. Huh?
It's a formula that is now being used
Oh,
successfully.
the comment of the I don't know, saying Guardians of the Galaxy reaction. I'm having some issues with the terminology. I just turned it into
Aaron
Molly.
doesn't want you to ice Guardians 2.
I'm gonna ice Guardians 2 for a moment, because let me tell you, the first
Oh,
5 minutes were
God.
some of the most difficult to get through because of the absolute apparent shift over from consumer culture that you clearly saw, which was this sort of movement over
he
from
educated.
individual characters to these smaller, youthful characters who can dance and make jokes while serious things are going on in the background. And
didn't
things
get
that
that
could
from
be
that movie
used
at all.
could be used
Yo,
very, very
it's hard
well.
for Groot to act like a fucking adult when he's 2 feet tall.
Exactly. So then, why have it as a character? Like
They go-
it's-
they-
What?
because it's a good because it's
No,
a
no, no, no,
good-
no. It's they start there because they end somewhere completely different. There's an arc to like their attitudes towards the situation. And we're not gonna talk about this right now because we're not gonna get into a Guardians discussion. But Last Jedi, lots of symbolism, lots of it on the nose to Aaron's complete point.
I don't think any of the characters
yeah.
changed. Like, I loved Rose.
There you go.
I loved her a lot. But from the beginning to the end, what? She gets, like, more courageous?
She love is the answer.
Like, what the
Yeah.
fuck? Like, what kind of shit is that?
I agree.
And that's,
Like, what is this, Power Rangers? Like, she got her self-esteem back. I'm like, what?
yeah.
and that's the last word
Yeah.
on The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? I liked it. I liked it a lot.
It's just very uneven.
It's just like I just want to slap it in. I want it to do better.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I'm
Exactly,
annoyed.
exactly.
You know,
There's a lot of
There's so much room.
potential, but it was apparent as to where they are trying to go and who they're sort of forcing it onto. And
Cut to Vince like 20 minutes before this, just like staring at
I'm
Star
not
Wars: The
saying
Last
it's
Jedi.
not a bad
It
movie.
looks nice. It looks nice.
It looks nice. I'm just saying that just very. They're not trying to hide anything anymore. It's not like they're
Perfect
trying
film.
to. Yeah, exactly.
And we're gonna leave this on some recommendations based on better versions of what The Last Jedi does and similar feelings. So I'll go first. I would suggest going. Okay, so you can look this up on YouTube. There's this short film that debuted in front of The Empire Strikes Back in limited theaters.
Oh yeah.
It's a short film. It's a short film called Black Angel.
Yes.
It's a very, very interesting medieval fantasy with like a really dark tone, and it's like
great.
it's really cool, and the cinematography is really good. And I would say go for that if you want some mythic stuff that's like Star Wars. Erynn.
Oh my god, I don't know. Vince, you go first.
Speaking of fantasy, I would say Excalibur if you want a very good view of the hero cycle, to be honest.
Sure.
Which, speaking of fantasy at the beginning and the medieval element that you saw at that Charlie just mentioned, a lot of this is drawn from the hero cycle developed by by the Arthur Vulgate cycle. So you'll see a lot of very similar, a lot of similar instances, a lot of similar adventures, a lot of similar development of characters, and so yeah, I would say if you want something that's closer to this without the overt and totalist perspective on some things, I would say watch Excalibur.
If you want the hero's journey, just go fucking read it in poetics and then watch a film that doesn't follow it.
Boom.
Seven Samurai.
There you go.
Like literally, I'm like, there's so much more interesting things in the hero's journey. I get so tired of it. Like, and then like the watered down like 3-act Hollywood structure where it's like Plan A fails, Plan B works.
Oh my
like
God,
I'm like, God damn it.
Well,
No,
let's
you're
switch it
right.
up. And what about
Christ.
Plan C?
Yeah, it's just like, ugh. But I mean, I guess it has nothing to do with Star Wars. Go watch The Wall. It's a German film. It's so good.
That sounds good.
It's real good. It's kind of like it's definitely like, it's a hero's journey with just the hero.
Oh,
I like that.
It's amazing,
That
and
sounds
it's
really
also
cool.
for those people who don't want to watch a foreign film. It's dubbed in English, so you have no excuse.
There you go. Also, nothing
Calling you
mixed
out.
up with The Wall by Pink Floyd.
very similar.
Devand.
Default.
Also, Wonderwall by Oasis.
Great.
All right, Erynn,
Firefall.
why don't you kick us off on where they can reach us?
You can reach us at gentlemenprefercinephiles.net.
You can find us here on YouTube under Gentlemen Prefer Cinephiles.
Instagram, Gentlemen for Cinephile.
We got iTunes.
Yeah, we do have iTunes. We're on iTunes.
That's us.
And we also have that new search engine that we're on.
We're on like a podcast search engine now. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, anyway, have a very...
Wait, where can you find Vince?
Vincent.
You can find me
On Tinder.
Facebook, Instagram.
Someone beat him.
You can find me on Tinder. You can find me
Ladies.
If you want to have a little talk about symbology and anthropology, hit me up.
You know, have a little...
Do you want to talk about the cave and if we're just watching shadows of real things on the
You guys
walls?
like the Plato's Allegory of the Cave?
Exactly. Let's talk anthropology. Anyways,
Oh God,
hit
the
me up
poetics
on
makes me so wet.
Instagram. Hit me up on Facebook. Wherever you can find me is fine. Yeah.
Lovely,
You
Erynn.
said hit me up on wherever you can find, but you didn't say where to find you.
I said Facebook,
Oh,
Instagram. I guess if you
Conrad's
want to
River.
email me, you could email me.
Conrad's River.
Instagram is at Conrad's River, capital C.
That's a better hero's journey.
Oh, yeah.
That's a much
That's a
better
good one.
because
Very
it doesn't
great.
follow the hero's journey.
Great.
Well, I mean,
we
it-
could have a whole nother
Somebody going on a trip.
discussion about that.
Joseph Conrad, Joseph Campbell, we figured it out, America. Illuminati confirmed. You got any final words on Star Wars, Erynn?
Go watch 3 Idiots. It's a Bollywood film. It's real good.
I love Bollywood. Bollywood. You want to watch real stories with real character development.
Have a star-tastic day. Go to Disney World. Go onto the Star Wars ride and give them all your money. Give them everything.
Go
There's
buy a
nothing
pork.
left. They own everything.
Go buy a pork.
They have us. We're being
Yeah,
tapped right
exactly,
now.
yeah.
We're part of the 21st Century Fox. We're all dead.
Yeah.
And
Go buy
we're
a pork and make it dance and do jokes and then make a movie about it.
I wanted so many porks.
Another
after
Star
this.
Wars or two every year until we're all dead.
Yeah, the end.
Merry Christmas.